Tremor is a common movement disorder characterized by involuntary rhythmic muscle contractions that lead to shaking movements in one or more parts of the body. It is most commonly seen in the hands. The impact of tremor on an individual's life can be significant. It can interfere with daily activities like writing, drinking, eating, or using a phone or a computer. This not only affects physical abilities but can also have emotional and social repercussions. People with tremor may experience frustration, embarrassment, and even social isolation due to challenges they face. There are various types of tremors, and there are many types of treatments like medications or sometimes even surgery like deeper brain stimulation. However, we will talk about SteadiWear, a company that is at the forefront of innovative approach to managing these tremors. Unlike medication or surgery, which can have significant side effects or involve invasive procedures, SteadiWear develops non-invasive devices designed to provide immediate tremor stabilization. These devices use technology to detect and counteract tremor movements, offering a new level of freedom and independence to those affected by these conditions. With their focus on the ease of use, effectiveness, and improving quality of life, SteadiWear represents a promising solution in ongoing challenge of managing tremor-related disorders. SteadiWear innovatively adopts technologies originally designed for earthquake stabilization to address the human tremors. Without further ado, let's talk to the CEOs of SteadiWear. Welcome, Emil and Mark. I'm so happy to have you today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having us.
It's good to be here.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, it's great to be here. I've been following your progress for a while, and I'm very interested in learning more about it, about SteadiWear. So can you tell me what was the aha moment that led to the inception of SteadiWear? Can you walk me the initial spark and the early days of getting the idea off the ground?
Yeah, it's a really interesting beginning actually, because Emil and myself, we both have tremors in our families. So I myself being an engineer, having studied structural engineering, how to stabilize buildings and earthquakes, it gave me this frame of reference, and living that frustration firsthand of there is no real good solution for tremors. My mind started just obsessing over it, and then finally the two dots connected of why don't we use earthquake technology as inspiration and actually create an application for tremors. And then obviously me and Emil met, and then we instantly shared that passion, and we never really looked back. And I know Emil has a perspective on that as well.
Yeah, it was a perfect timing. Mark and I were introduced as neighbors. I think Mark's grandmother got diagnosed around the same time that my grandmother got diagnosed with essential tremor, and we were looking at the options in the market, and it was either something that you had to ingest that's bulleted with side effects, or something very intrusive that was very expensive. And given Mark's background in engineering, he saw things with a different lens, and so we applied to a program at the University of Toronto, where they prepared us to launch a company and equipped us with some awesome mentors, and we hit the ground running and never looked back.
I love it. Yeah, I do. Like my dad also had essential tremor, and that's why when I saw the product, I was like, oh wow, this is very interesting. It was like, I just want to touch base on essential tremor from the medical perspective. I've seen lots of patients with it, and tremor, when it comes to tremor, like we classify to subcategories. We have the essential tremor, which is something that happens in elderly people, usually comes with family history. It gets better when you drink alcohol, but you can't medicate with people with alcohol 24/7 to stop the tremor, right? My dad had essential tremor, which sucks. He always comes to me and asks me, okay, what should I do? What should I do? And well, you can try propranolol, you can touch some medications. There are first line, second try, but everything's been very frustrating for him. So it is a huge problem. And people say well, if that is 50, 60, what's the problem?
Well, if you think about it, my sister now, she's in health sciences and she is very afraid to apply to surgery after doing medicine because of the essential tremor. It's something she has to think about. So if you have a family history of essential tremor, like it's something you have to keep in your mind. If you want to become a dentist or like a surgeon or anything that requires hand dexterity. So I think the problem is just beyond old age, and the treatments available out there. It's like it's frustrating. I hear you, but stop me talking and like I just want to understand a bit. So let's say I'm an entrepreneur and like I'm in your shoes right now. Can you talk to me like what was the program? How long was it? What did you learn from it? And like if you tell me like one take-home point from that program, what would it be?
Emil, you wanna chime
Yeah,
in?
I think they reflected on every single aspect of the business, whether it was intellectual property. They walked us through the process of how to file a patent, introduced us to the leading law firm that we should engage with, incorporation of a business, what the right structure is, how to build a slide deck. You know, we went through the Guy Kawasaki framework. We went through how to build a go-to-market strategy. We went through basically every single step of the business canvas that you typically see. We had hours upon hours from leading experts in the space elaborating on the process. And then they even brought in some of the government-related funders that could help us find our first, grant to help us develop our first technology. And they gave us access to some prototyping facilities where we were able to, machine and tool a device that eventually became our first prototype.
Yeah, and you know what, Rupen, to add to that as well, I mean, they really, in summary, they gave us the road rules because we're first-time founders. So they really brought in a variety of experts, really gave us the road rules on how to avoid some obvious mistakes to make. And I mean, it's been incredibly helpful. It really gave us a framework on how to approach this. I mean, back in the day, obviously starting a company, in Silicon Valley was more like the Wild West, but now, it's more of a discipline. You have skill sets that you need to develop, pitching, cash management, how to manage a team, how to think about scale up. So there's so many different concepts and skills that they instill in us, and the truth is, what you also learn is that the best way to actually learn is just by doing it, and really every day is a new learning experience for us. So
Amazing. So when you start the company, I think one of the major things that you face as a founder is setbacks, and sometimes like you have to pivot, you have to change your trajectory. Have you faced like any similar moment when you were starting this and in your journey, and what was it and what did you do?
Yeah, I mean, that is, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we encountered so many different junctures where it's, persevere or, pivot or die. So in our case, every company usually comes with two buckets of risk. It's usually either market risk or technical risk. At the start, for us, naturally, it was technical risk, right? I mean, there was an obvious need for this product that we identified, but the technological risk was there, and that's where the pivots and perseverance junctures happen. So early stages of tech development, tremors are very complicated. Each tremor patient has a certain frequency and a certain amplitude, and those variables change wildly, even between activities, number one. Number two, the research available on tremors, it's very limited. I mean, if you have a problem you want to solve, you should spend 95% of the time thinking about the problem and understanding it, and 5% of the time solving it. So for us, the struggle is really gathering a good understanding of the problem to come up with an effective solution, right? So that naturally came with time, and we had to persevere, build a variety of versions, release them on the market, gather feedback, iterate. So it really was a mix of perseverance in terms of fighting to to get to the right solution that meets the requirement of tremors and tremor patients, and pivoting, making changes to the technology, upgrading and making it better. And it really, the fact that we were able to pivot and persevere is why we're here today. That's the truth.
Yeah, so some of the pivots I can reflect on includes, launching a medical device during COVID. Although it was a class 1, we still needed to find some validation, and we needed to at least get some people to give us testimonials, some people to show the device works, and because all the clinical trial sites were not accepting new trials, we had to go direct to market through the B2C channel. And what we learned very quickly is that is a completely different strategy. It requires a lot more resources, whether it's customer service, whether it's marketing, customer support, you name it. We had to basically adapt and pivot every step of the way to get to a point where we realized, okay, now we have enough validation, and we pivoted again back to B2B. Most recently, in the past 2 quarters, once we had enough feedback from the customers, we went back to the B2B channel and found our way comfortably there. And now we're going to be running a new trial with a newer version of the technology.
Yeah, so I just want to also add, like, from my perspective, people look at tremors. I think we can tackle this, both of us. So you can talk about the technological aspect of the device. I can talk about the tremor. So people look at tremor as tremor, but as you mentioned earlier, tremor comes with different flavors. So you have the resting tremor that we see in patients with Parkinson disease, and then you have the actionable tremor that comes with different disease. I'm not going to go through the differential diagnosis, but you have some tremors that happen with rest, some tremors happen with action, and as you mentioned, you have the pill rolling tremor that usually we see it in patients with Parkinson disease. We have the essential tremor that is usually up and down when reaching objects. We have tremors that comes due to strokes, when we have a stroke in the cerebellum, which is the organ that coordinates our movements. So there are many types of tremor. And that, when I saw the technology, I was surprised. So let's assume I have zero knowledge about medicine, technology, and I only know tremor. How can you explain to me how the technology works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So look, I mean, from our standpoint, we look at this as a mechanical engineering problem. The way we look at the human arm is essentially like a beam that vibrates, and our technology is there to absorb the vibration. Okay, so simply put, the way this tech works, picture a block, a mass, okay, and a spring attached to it, and that spring is then attached to a vibrating piece of metal. So when the piece of metal vibrates, the spring and the mass will move against it, and eventually what happens is that mass is going to vibrate instead of that piece of metal. So it's basically absorbing the vibration of the metal by vibrating itself, right? That's how this technology works. So that's the simplest form of it. What we did with it is we replaced those springs with repulsive magnets. Magnets that a lot of people have played with magnets throughout their life, for sure. So when you have 2 magnets and you sort of bring them together, north face to the north face, they're repulsive, and you feel that resisting force increase very fast the closer they get together. So we replaced those springs with repulsive magnets, and that has huge advantages for tremors. So the mass spring mechanism, that really works well for one frequency. So what we learned when we were evaluating tremors is that tremor frequencies jump from 3 hertz to 5 to 7, depending on what you're doing. And so using repulsive magnets actually allowed the system to target a wide variety of frequencies. It becomes much more versatile that way. And that's why it's so appropriate for tremors themselves, right? So it's literally a mass, it's a disc controlled by magnets that moves against the tremor. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
very involved in the tech in a way, but I hope that was clear. Was it?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I was just gonna add, like, I always advocate like for we need more physician founders, we need more physician founders. But like I think I have to rethink about what I say because like if you didn't have the background that you guys have, I
Yeah.
don't think any physician would like I would like need a million years to think about maybe magnets, maybe like can absorb this, like you know.
You know what, Rupen, that's actually a really important topic. It's the multidisciplinary aspect of this. I
Mhm.
myself couldn't have, accomplished this alone. I had to work with designers, I had to work with physicians to understand tremors, I had to work with um, vibration mechanics experts, mechanical engineering experts. So it's really a collective effort. This physician input is critical in this as well, right? As important as engineering, vibration engineering input, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a collective effort. Yeah.
Nice. Um, so what makes really healthcare different from other spaces? So if you want to become like a tech engineer, you just create a product, put it in the app store, release it to the market, and see the market will uh, say the word. But like when it comes to healthcare, there are lots of regulations, and one of the big regulators are like FDA and Health Canada in North America. Where are you guys when it comes to the FDA or Health Canada, and how are you navigating this?
I mean, it's the FDA and Health Canada. I mean, those regulatory bodies are there to really ensure that any device that's hitting the market is safe, first of all. So it's really about risk evaluation. So you have systematic, systematic lists in place. Your device is going to fall into a certain category of risk. So if you happen to fall under a class 1 risk device, which is a low risk, then the regulatory process is actually simpler, right? It's you have to register your facility as a manufacturer, provided that you fall under that risk class. So, for example, think about these wrist braces for carpal tunnel or other wrist braces that you would see at a pharmacy. Those are class 1 devices, and we fall under the same risk class. So for us, it was really straightforward from a regulatory standpoint, and we're sort of an interesting intersection as a company because we are, we are a company that is in the medical space, but because our regulatory pathway is more straightforward, it allows us more flexibility in terms of how, how many barriers we have to commercialization, right? The barriers become different. They're not necessarily from a regulatory standpoint. They're more, is the technology appropriate for the problem, and how do you scale up? What's the clinical strategy? Those become the set of problems. So it's really a different approach. Companies with a higher risk class 2, class 3, it's a completely different process. It takes years. You need a predicate device for the FDA. You have to conduct multiple clinical trials. It's a completely different process.
Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes the FDA is not, as you mentioned, I think it was like part of it, there was like some patient education and reaching the market. Talking about that, I want also like pick your brain on, I think, Emil, you mentioned earlier about like B2B, B2C, and like, can you tell me like, who is your customer? Like, what's your market segment that you are trying to reach, and how are you reaching them?
That's a great question. So with the Steady 1 device and the Steady 2 device, we went direct to consumer, and we had a couple of distributors in the pipeline too. So we were actually shopping it to the end user, to their caregiver, their family members, and sometimes their children. Their caregivers umbrella included their occupational therapist, their physical therapist, their caregiver in the senior care facility that they might be in. And in some cases, it was also, their spouse, their family member. So we had quite a few different customer personas that we had to tackle, and we had to adjust our marketing to accommodate all these different stakeholders. Now, on the distributor side, we had your typical medical device distributors, Maybe they had some more specific markets that they tackled. For example, we have one that only tackles the veteran affairs market. In the rest of world, what we're seeing emerge is that, and we're seeing this now with the study 3 also, and more specifically, is that assistive devices have their own distributors in many jurisdictions, and they vary from your typical medical device distributor. So we had to cater to them, identify which conferences they were at. And last but not least, when you're working with B2B2C, which is, clinic demonstrations, activities in hospitals, activities where the device is being demonstrated prior to the purchase of the product, and the patient can try it before they buy it. We had to work with clinicians, neurologists, and of course, owner operators, and last but not least, clinic managers. Those are, in a nutshell, the top 10 I could think of. I know it sounds like a lot, but we've narrowed it down now to just medical device distributors or assistive device distributors, and mainly clinicians, clinic managers, and neurologists.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's not easy to know who is the main buyer of your product. It's something that comes, especially when it comes to patients, not lots of patients think that there is a mechanic. They're like, I am a physician, and I never thought about oh, there is something like this. And that's what got me excited the first time I saw this, because I saw it, I thought it's very innovative. It takes time to figure out who's your target customer. And I think you touched upon very important thing. What makes I think the medical device space and the healthcare space different is marketing, and how to market and where to market. You mentioned conferences, and I think this is really undervalued marketing strategy that not lots of health-tech startups try to utilize. One of the companies that I'm advisor for, yesterday we were talking, and they were like, oh my God, lots of my customers came through conferences, and I didn't realize that. I wish I paid more attention to conferences. Not only that, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. So I was watching Shark Tank. There was a similar to medical device eye patch. And this person who created this very nice looking eye patch for young people, she didn't do any social media marketing, which is against all the rules that all companies that appear on Shark Tank. She mainly went to medical offices, ophthalmologists, optometrists. And I think same here, knowing how to reach because you need patient education, and that's what you have to reach the right segment. Sorry, Mark, were you gonna add anything?
I couldn't agree more. I'll give you an example. I just attended the American Congress of Rehab Medicine conference this past week, and what a lot of the feedback I got is, hey, is there a CEU, a continuing education course that elaborates on assistive devices in the tremor space? If not, are you open to partaking in creating one?
Wow.
Activities like that are critical to elaborating on the options that are available for the occupational therapists, especially because OTs and PTs, the physical therapists, they have to take CEUs every year to progress their career and maintain their in the know status. That's something that is also not very clear in the market. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Conferences are underrated. Our first distributor came from a conference. Our second distributor came from a conference. They're a blessing in disguise, and the prices can look intimidating up front, but when you go out and do your direct to consumer marketing on these different channels like social media ads and stuff, and you come back and you compare the price to a conference, you quickly realize that the conference is more targeted, and the acquisition cost, if you're at the right place, if you're at the right conference, is significantly lower. Now, to the point of if you're at the right conference, that can be a little bit tricky. A lot of them have very, very similar names, and you just have to make sure to look at the sponsors, and you'll have a better idea of what's going on there.
Also, Ruben, you know, it really depends on the nature of the company and the stage of the company. So take a medical device company, let's say, you know, wants to have a published clinical trial, then it makes sense for them to go to a targeted conference for the right. You know, let's say it's an AI software that helps with early cancer detection. Then they can go to an oncology conference with their poster and you know, start physician education, which then leads to patient education. But then if you're, you know, on the flip side, if you're a purely commercial product and there's an established online marketplace, then, you know, conferences aren't necessarily relevant. So it's really a case by case thing, I think. Every company is unique in that sense.
Yeah, I can't agree more. So in terms of product development, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you were creating the glove, and like how did you overcome this challenge? I found this is like very like a black box. How to create a product?
Oh yeah, it's a black box, and I have some really cool insights to share. I think the main thing, and where a lot of founders go wrong, where I went wrong at the start, is, I mean, you have to build a set of product requirements. You know, this is the surefire way to get it right, because every product has a set of requirements, you know, to ensure product market fit. And where I've made mistakes and where other people have as well, other founders. Let's say you have an engineer and a designer working together on a team. Okay, and they're trying to solve a problem. The engineer, all the engineer cares about is how well the device works and how sound is the engineering. What the designer cares about is how good the device looks. And imagine these two are working without a set of clearly defined requirements. You're going to end up with a mess, because the engineer is purely focused on function, the designer is purely focused on how it looks, and no one is working off, you're not on the same page. So how do you get on the same page, right? If, let's say you have must-haves for your device and want-to-have for your device. So an example of a must-have, that the device cannot exceed 200 grams, okay? A common mistake is, okay, you build a prototype, you get it working. It's above 200 grams, but it seems all right. Let's do it. That's a mistake. You need a checklist, a very strict checklist that you agree on even before you start. Because once you start to, you know, get, what's the word? Loosey-goosey with your checklist, that's where the mistakes start. That's where the problems start to arise. Okay. So I think the real thing is to take a stakeholders approach. You have to evaluate every single stakeholder involved with your product. In our case, I'll give an example. It's the patient, the person demonstrating the product, the manufacturer, right? There's a whole list of stakeholders. And each stakeholder, we have to understand their requirements. We have to marry them, turn them into a checklist of what the product has to do, what the constraints are, and have the entire team of designers, engineers, clinicians work off the same list. And, you know, that comes from patient interviews, neurologist interviews, as I mentioned. It has to be fed from data. So just to come back to the original question, our problem at the start is that we weren't using really this method. We were just trying to get something that works quickly. But, you know, naturally we adopted this method, and that's when we started to see success. So that's what I recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you brought an important point. Sorry, were you saying anything else?
Oh no, I was just saying the stakeholder approach is what is really the key here. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like, you know, like every day, like I love Apple products. I love them. I have like the nice thing is like I'm in love with the design. And every day, like when I go to patient's room and I see the monitors, when I'm in the hospital, I look at the computers, the design of the technology in healthcare sucks.
Yeah.
And you brought up the idea of having a designer working with them, which it's very important, man. Like, we don't pay attention to design in medicine at all.
I know. I mean, depending on which device you're talking about, there's always an industrial design component, and the industrial design, his job is to make the device a functional device, manufacturable, and it has to look good as well. You know, the industrial designer has a really complicated, difficult job, and I think it comes down to the same thing. You know, most of the successful products I've seen, it comes from really an understanding of what the end user needs. At the end of the day, it's a discretized, specific list of what the product has to do so that the end user is happy. And the entire team has to work together and follow that list. So when you look at a device and you say, this device sucks and I hate using it, all that tells me is that the team behind this device didn't interview enough physicians. They didn't understand the problem enough. They didn't understand the user interface enough, and no one was on the same page. That's what it tells me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think like I don't want to talk a lot about the UI UX in healthcare, but like I think no one, like especially like interview physicians and no one interview patients enough. I can talk about EMRs like 24/7, and I can I'm frustrated by the amount of data that pulls in front of me every single day when I look into patients' EMR, electronic medical record. Like, I don't need all this. All I need is notes, medications, and the orders that they have or whatever. Like, all I need is 2 to 3 tabs, and they are like 5,000 tabs that I don't need, and I can't remove them from my face, which is very frustrating.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem. I think, because that's what's going to drive adoption as well. You know, if you get the user interface right and physicians are happy, in the medical world, when you're commercializing either a device or anything, a therapeutic, a diagnostic, it's all about the physician and the patient or whoever. It's one or the other that's using it, right? Yeah, and you have to make sure that it's meeting their requirements. So EMR software has to meet your requirements, your physician. And if it doesn't, then it's not going to get adopted at scale. You know?
Yeah, it's not only that, it's not about like how I like it, it's also patient safety with concern. But because like when I'm facing all this data, by the end of the day, like my brain stops processing and I just make mistakes by omitting. For example, it's for me, it's important to go to the blood work for every patient, the imaging for every patient, the notes are written for every patient. And this is what I need. I don't need their date of birth or their vaccination to manage their care while they're in the hospital. If there was a system that gives me only the important things that I need, so this will decrease my risk of omitting looking into this data and taking decisions. Anyways, we're not going to go to the EMR. Back to my questions about SteadiWear. You've been in the market, and medical devices are expensive, and it takes time and takes funding. So what are the hurdles that you faced when you were trying to seek funding, reach out to funders? What were the challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Mark?
Go ahead, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, some of the hurdles that we came across were, nobody knows anything about this market. There isn't a lot of market research available. It's not AI. It's not in these sexy realms that everybody's looking into. It falls in between wearable, MedTech, and consumer goods. So you can't really go to a specific VC and say, "Hey, this is what we're pitching, and this is totally up your alley." It's not. There isn't exactly. We're now seeing more progress in that space, but age tech, senior tech, assistive device technology. It's not like there are too many programs that you can knock on their door and say, "Oh, hey, we'd love to pitch to you." You really have to create the need and create the demand and the interest, and then fall back to it.
I mean, it starts with look, we were really fortunate here, Rupen, because you know, we were able to access a lot of grants in the early days that really accelerated development. It sort of gave us, you know, it gave us the runway to actually build the tech and work with, you know, expand the team, work with engineers and designers to improve the tech and bring it to the point where we have an MVP and we can commercialize it. So really, the advantage of grants at the start, you know, really helped us accelerate development. And it's what you do with the grant money in the first year or two of your operation that can help you actually start to get institutional money, because you'll be hitting milestones and metrics that make you investable, right? So I think it's really important at the start to leverage government grants, and I have to say that you know, you execute well and you create a track record for yourself with grant funding that you've received as a first-time founder. You know, you have a track record, and clearly, you know, in our case, there's a big market for tremors, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar a year opportunity in the U.S. So there will always be funding for good companies that are targeting a specific need, and that's how we raised our first round in 2021, right? We had accomplished quite a bit with government grants. We built a product, we commercialized it, we got feedback, we built a second one, and really at that stage, you know, we had a strong track record, strong market, and that's what accelerated the fundraising for us. Fundraising in and of itself is a full-time job almost, but as Emil was alluding to, but I think you get the groundwork done with you know, documentation, having good methods to build the product market fit. There's a lot of different aspects and elements that you have to get right, but then you know, fundamentally you'll get funded. But there's a whole checklist of things to go through first, especially as a first-time founder. I don't know how else to put this.
No, yeah. I agree. I think you mentioned something very important here, which like so I did lots of like pitches, and one of the common questions is, what are you going to do with the money? What are you going to do with the funds? But I don't think lots of people ask, or rarely ask, okay, so what have you done with the previous money?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's what kind of traction you build, and it's not only that, Rupen, you know, it's also, and this is the biggest, you know, this was the biggest revelation for us before we closed our first round, is how well thought out is your scale-up strategy to the detail. I mean, you know, it's really nice to give projections and say, yeah, you know, we're going to generate $100 million in 4 years. That's great, but I'm talking about the backbone of everything. Everything has to be connected in your pitch. Your projections have to be connected to a go-to-market strategy very clearly, and those have to be connected to required resources to execute that go-to-market strategy to then tie into the projections. And obviously, all of this is tied into product market fit, which expands into how you developed your product. Did you develop it the right way? Did you use a stakeholder approach to make sure there's product market fit? So it's really about, you want to raise money, all of these aspects have to be aligned. Otherwise, you know, investors are professional skeptics at the end of the day, right? So if you haven't thought out every aspect of your operation really well, then that's risky for them, right? There's no reason to invest. So when we use the grant money at the start, we do it to actually start thinking about building the product, aligning all these things together to actually create a nice executable vision. That's what it is. They're investing in you at the end of the day, and I think if you don't align all of these aspects of your business, they won't trust you, and then they don't have a reason to. Honestly, why would they?
Yeah, I can't agree more. Especially like I think investors are skeptical professionals. Is that the term you used?
Yeah, and I completely
exactly. I can't agree more.
I completely agree with the way they do things. They have to do that, or else they won't be able to find which companies are investable and which ones aren't. And that's not only good for investors, that's good for the companies too, because it pushes us to actually think things through and do it. You know, and we're happy about that because
yeah, I when I attend pitches, I'm like, I see the amount of questions usually founders ask, and I was like, oh my God, like you should really know every single detail and every single answer for every single question to get, especially like people who invest in health tech. If either like your physician angel investors who really understand medicine and really understand like they have a business background, or they are VCs who are backed by PhD people, PhD students or PhD grads, and working with PhD with like it's very hard, not because like it's they have difficult because personality, because like they are very very detail oriented. That's what research makes you like. Researchers are unbelievably in a good way,
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a really important aspect of this as well is to build a good advisory board around you to cover some of your right as a company. I mean, Emil and myself were really complementary in terms of skill sets, but in terms of clinical background, neurology, there's a variety of aspects where we have external advisors that are there to really help guide us, and I think that's really critical too. Yeah, they're not there to run your company. You have to make the executives make the decisions, but I think they have to be well-informed decisions.
Yeah. How is the feedback so far from the medical community? Like you have advisors around you, they are MDs, and other than the advisor, like the people who use the device, how do they find it?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, we've had incredible feedback from the batch, and yeah, we have we're working closely with Pisces Healthcare, so it's a distributor for veteran affairs specifically, and they have some great feedback too. We collect clinical data as well from our patients on the Quest scale, so the quality of life in essential tremor, and we've seen more than 2/3 of patients experience a significant improvement in quality of life. So, we couldn't be happier. The patients are happy, and I know Emil has quite a bit of input here as well.
Oh man, yeah, we've garnered a lot of feedback. As Mark mentioned, we've surveyed every single different stakeholder imaginable. We've surveyed over 2,000 people with tremors to date, more than 100 clinicians between neurologists and occupational therapists, and some of them have given us awesome feedback. For example, we have patients that are using the device to shave their beards. We have patients that are using the device to apply makeup as like eyeliner, for example. Or there are people that are using it to drink, eat, everything you can imagine. Carpenters, clarinet players. We've heard it all at this point.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh yeah, I was gonna add. We have all this real world evidence. It's always a mouthful. That we gathered, and at this point, we're working with a lot of different movement disorders hospitals in the U.S. And that's going to set the stage for our clinical study as well, which we're really excited about. I mean, we have the protocols in place, and right now we're just we're finalizing product specs. So I think getting moving up the ladder in terms of the evidence we're gathering, and get clinical evidence is the next step. Yeah, but that doesn't stop us from commercializing, given the incredible feedback we have from RWE.
Yeah, you mentioned something important here, like in your comments about the feedback. Some people were able to shave or apply mascara, and one of the questions that someone will ask when they see the device, okay, so who is going to wear the device all day long? Well, like sometimes you don't need to wear the device all day long. Sometimes like, there's a certain thing. Let's imagine you're a 65-year-old, 70-year-old, live by yourself, no one is around you, and you need to shave, and you can't do that for essential tremor. Isn't it worth it to wear this for like 10-15 minutes while you're shaving, while you're eating? Of course it's worth it.
Yeah.
Most definitely. It'll save them time. It will reduce their anxiety, increase their independence and their confidence in themselves while reducing their caretaking costs.
Yeah, it's it's really nice to see that our clients are actually regaining their independence. That's a really big motivating factor for us as well. To push the boundaries and make the products even better. but yeah, it's certainly rewarding, and yeah, they don't have to use the device every minute of every day. I think every patient has their own specific set of, I want to use this device to be able to have a meal, without issues, or I want to get back to painting, or it's there's a lot of variance in what everyone needs, right?
Looking forward, what's the horizon for SteadiWear? Are there any developments or expansion in the work that you already started, or are you thinking about expanding into other types of products?
Yeah, I mean, with us, we're laser focused on tremors, because with our tech and with our pipeline, we're confident that we're going to disrupt the continuum of care around the world with with our offerings. So at the end of the day, we have the Steady 3, which is going to be our next pipeline product. Incredibly exciting, just with the efficacy metrics that go with it. It's going to be unparalleled, and our goal is to add more products down the line. So the Steady Cup is going to come after the Steady 3, because we know that drinking is one of the toughest activities for patients, and we want to create an individual solution for that down the line as well, even though the glove can target everything. But yeah, it's really about layering a variety of options. We want to be the one-stop shop for tremor solutions around the world. So that's the vision. Yeah.
Nice, I like that. And what about competition? Like, are there any other competitors in the market who are creating something similar? And what makes you unique and different?
Yeah, I mean, competition-wise, if we look at alternative therapies, there's the Cala device, really good therapeutic device, has solid efficacy, but at the same time, it costs $5,000. It's a prescription-only device, and they can use it for an hour a day, so it has its limitations. There are other solutions like the LiftWear spoon. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the self-stabilizing spoon. They got bought out by Google in 2015. Really cool company as well. But I think with our approach, and our offering, I think having unlimited usage, the device being battery free, so you can use it as however long you need, right? It's very high efficacy. I mean, it's exceeding anything anywhere at 85%. I think. I think we have a very strong competitive positioning.
Not to mention the affordability compared to some of the other players out there. I think it's really a sweet spot there.
Yeah.
All right, so we're almost at time. I only have a couple of questions left. Regarding scaling, how do you envision scaling? Where do you see your market? Do you want to stay like in North America, or do you want to expand worldwide?
Certainly, worldwide expansion is the goal, right? So we work with distributors outside the United States. So, in Australia and South Korea, Japan, the MENA region, and Europe as well. Those are our next target geographies. And, in the US, that's where we're more hands-on, US and Canada. So that's where we'll be, working with Pisces Healthcare and the VA, as well as working with clinics. Yeah.
Okay. My last question for entrepreneurs who are listening: what's the one piece of advice you're giving to someone who is looking to start in a MedTech company, who's going to start in a MedTech space, other than don't start in a MedTech space?
That was my initial thought, but Emil.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think you need to have great synergy with your co-founders. You need to have each other's backs. You need to be able to trust and complement each other's skill sets in order to really fill the gaps in a team and persevere through the winters?
I think, the my core philosophy is this, Ruben. I think great companies are built around great products, okay? And great products are built around the right approach. So please, if you're thinking about starting a hardware company of any kind, medical or otherwise, just use the stakeholder approach and, save yourself time and heartache. Yeah, because you wanna build a great company, build a great product. It's really simple.
Yeah. Especially in the healthcare space.
I'll just add to that great products are all built by great people. So make sure you have the right team.